Commander Zeftar of the Kytherian Imperial Navy stood before the assembled war council, his four arms clasped behind his chitinous back. The massive alien's compound eyes swept across the room, filled with military leaders from 12 different species. Each representative sat in their specialized atmospheric chambers, breathing their homeworld's air while participating in what would become the most important military briefing in galactic history. The holographic display behind Zeftar showed a small blue planet orbiting a yellow star in the Outer Rim territories. Earth, a world that had been dismissed by every major power in the galaxy as insignificant. A planet inhabited by a species that had barely achieved faster-than-light travel and possessed technology centuries behind the galactic standard. Fellow commanders, Zeftar began, his translator converting his clicking speech into the common galactic tongue. Today I stand before you not as a conqueror, but as a survivor. What I am about to tell you will challenge everything we thought we knew about warfare, about predation, and about the nature of intelligence itself. General Vorthak, a massive reptilian from the Draconian hegemony, leaned forward in his chamber. His scales rippled with dismissive patterns. Commander Zeftar, you requested this emergency session to discuss a primitive world in Sector 7. The humans of Earth have been monitored for decades. They are barely spacefaring. Their weapons are chemical propellants and crude energy beams. What could they possibly teach us about warfare? Zeftar's mandibles clicked in what his species considered a bitter laugh. General Vorthak, I thought the same thing 6 months ago when High Command assigned my fleet to establish a forward observation post in their system. It was supposed to be a routine mission. 3 heavy cruisers, 2 destroyers, and my flagship. We were to observe and report on their technological development. Nothing more. The Kytherian commander activated another hologram showing his fleet in pristine condition. 5 massive vessels that represented the pinnacle of galactic military engineering. Each ship carried enough firepower to glass a planet's surface. We dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of their system, standard observation protocol. Far enough to avoid immediate detection, but close enough to monitor their communications and military movements. Our intelligence suggested they had recently developed primitive FTL drives, but had not yet expanded beyond their home system. Admiral Ziltichwises, a graceful aquatic being floating in her water-filled chamber, spoke through her translator. Surely such a primitive species posed no threat to a Kytherian battle group. That is what we believed, Zeftar replied, his compound eyes darkening. We maintained position for 3 standard days, cataloging their satellite networks, monitoring their global communications, and mapping their military installations. They appear to be exactly what our intelligence report suggested. A young species still struggling with planetary conflicts and resource distribution. The commander paused, his claws clicking against the metal podium. On the 4th day, everything changed. Our long-range sensors detected an anomaly. A single human vessel had somehow appeared at the system's edge, directly behind our formation. Murmurs of confusion rippled through the chamber. General Vorthak's scales shifted to patterns of disbelief. Impossible. Your sensors would have detected any approaching vessel long before it could achieve such a position. That is what I told my sensor officer, Zeftar continued. But there it was, a human ship, roughly half the size of our smallest destroyer, maintaining perfect formation with our fleet. When we attempted to scan it, our sensors detected materials and energy signatures unlike anything in our databases. The hologram shifted to show the mysterious human vessel. It appeared almost organic, its hull seeming to shift and flow like liquid metal. Strange protrusions extended from various points, and energy patterns danced across its surface in hypnotic waves. We attempted to establish communication, Zeftar said. The response we received will haunt me for the rest of my extended lifespan. A human voice, speaking perfect Kytherian, said simply, "You are in violation of protected space. Withdraw immediately or face the consequences." Captain Mordun, an insectoid being from the Hive Collective, chittered with what passed for laughter among his species. A single primitive vessel threatened an entire Kytherian battle group. I had the same reaction, Zeftar admitted. I ordered my communications officer to inform them that they were addressing the Kytherian Imperial Navy and that they should withdraw immediately. The human's response was even more unsettling. "We know exactly who you are, Commander Zeftar of the Kayan Retribution. We know your service record, your family lineage, and the exact composition of your fleet. This is your final warning." The assembled commanders exchanged glances. The idea that a primitive species could possess such detailed intelligence was disturbing, but not necessarily threatening. "I order my weapons officer to lock onto the human vessel," Zeftar continued. "Standard intimidation protocols. The moment our targeting systems activated, everything changed. The human ship didn't just disappear from our sensors. It ceased to exist in any measurable way while somehow remaining visible to our optical systems." The hologram showed the Kytherian fleet's sensor readings during the encounter. Where the human ship should have registered, there was nothing. Not empty space, but an absence so complete it seemed to create a void in reality itself. Before we could process this impossibility, the humans demonstrated something that defied every law of physics we understand. They fired a single projectile. Not an energy beam, not a plasma torpedo, but what appeared to be a solid object traveling at a significant fraction of light speed. Zeftar manipulated the hologram to show the trajectory of the human weapon. This projectile passed directly between our vessels, missing the hull of my flagship by less than 50 meters. The gravitational wake alone was enough to trigger emergency protocols across the fleet. Admiral Zilti spoke again, her voice carrying notes of concern. A kinetic projectile at such velocities would require enormous amounts of energy to accelerate. That was our assessment, Zeftar agreed. But then we analyzed the projectile's composition. It was not exotic matter or some unknown alloy. It was iron. Common iron, accelerated to near-light speed through methods our scientists still cannot comprehend. The implications sent ripples of unease through the gathered commanders. The ability to accelerate common matter to such velocities represented a technology far beyond anything the galactic powers possessed. The human voice returned, Zeftar continued. But this time it carried something I had never heard in thousands of years of military service. Absolute certainty. The next projectile will not miss. You have 10 seconds to begin withdrawal procedures. General Vorthack's scales displayed patterns of incredulity. Surely you did not retreat from a single primitive vessel. Zeftar's mandibles clicked rapidly, a sign of extreme agitation among his species. General, in that moment, every instinct evolved over millions of years screamed at me to flee. Not the rational military mind, but something deeper, something primal. My species evolved from pack hunters on a world filled with predators. We learned to recognize when we had encountered something higher on the food chain. The commander activated another section of the hologram, showing detailed scans of the human vessel. While we hesitated, our passive scanners finally managed to penetrate whatever was masking the human ship. What we discovered changed everything. The image revealed the interior of the human vessel. Instead of the expected primitive control systems and basic technology, the scan showed something far more disturbing. The ship appeared to be alive. Organic components integrated seamlessly with mechanical systems. Neural networks that seemed to pulse with their own intelligence. And, most unsettling of all, areas that registered as existing in more dimensions than the standard 3. This was no ordinary spacecraft, Zeftar explained. It was a fusion of biology, technology, and something beyond our understanding. The humans had somehow created vessels that existed partially outside normal space-time. Captain Mordun leaned forward, his compound eyes reflecting the holographic display. "What did you do?" "I made the only rational choice," Zeftar replied. "I ordered the fleet to withdraw." As we powered our hyperspace drives, the human vessel transmitted one final message. Your species shows wisdom. Remember this encounter. Share what you have learned. Humanity does not seek conflict, but we will not tolerate aggression in our space. The assembled commanders sat in stunned silence as Zeftar continued his account. As we enter hyperspace, our sensors detected something impossible. The single human vessel somehow managed to scan our drives while they were in the process of folding space. They mapped our destination before we even arrived. Admiral Zil THYSS spoke in hushed tones. They track you through hyperspace? More than that, Zeftar said grimly. When we emerged in Kytherian space, they were waiting for us. Not the same ship, but another vessel of identical design. The human commander contacted us immediately and provided detailed intelligence reports on our own home system. Defensive positions, fleet compositions, even the personal schedules of our high command. The implications were staggering. If humans could track vessels through hyperspace and possessed intelligence networks throughout galactic space, then every military in the galaxy was potentially compromised. This briefing is the result of 6 months of investigation into human capabilities, Zeftar continued. What we have discovered is both fascinating and terrifying. Humans are not the primitive species we believe them to be. General Vorthack's scales shifted to patterns of deep concern. What exactly are you suggesting, Commander? I am suggesting that humans represent something unprecedented in galactic history, Zeftar replied. They're a species that has developed along completely different evolutionary paths than any known intelligent life. While we evolved to fill specific ecological niches, humans evolved as persistent hunters on a world that tried constantly to kill them. The hologram shifted to show Earth's surface. Unlike the stable, predictable worlds that had given birth to most galactic species, Earth appeared to be a planet in constant flux. Weather patterns that changed rapidly across vast temperature ranges. Geological activity that reshaped continents. An ecosystem where predators and prey relationships shifted constantly. Human evolution was shaped by adversity in ways we cannot comprehend, Zeftar explained. Their planet forced them to become adaptable above all else. While our species developed specialized abilities, humans developed the capacity to excel at anything they focused on. Captain Moore-Dunn chittered nervously. Surely this is an exaggeration? Consider their technological development, Zeftar responded. Most species require thousands of years to progress from basic tool used to spaceflight. Humans achieved it in less than a century. They went from primitive chemical rockets to faster-than-light travel in a single generation. The hologram displayed human technological progression. The rate of advancement was unlike anything in recorded galactic history. Where most species showed steady, predictable development curves, human progress appeared exponential. But technology alone does not explain what I witnessed, Zeftar continued. The human vessel demonstrated capabilities that suggest they have made fundamental breakthroughs in physics that our greatest scientists consider impossible. Admiral Zil THYSS spoke again, her voice carrying undertones of fear. What kind of breakthroughs? Manipulation of space-time on scales we thought required planet-sized installations, Zeftar replied. Energy generation that appears to violate conservation laws. And, most disturbing of all, evidence that they have learned to integrate organic consciousness with artificial intelligence in ways that create something entirely new. The gathered commanders absorbed this information with growing unease. If even half of what Zeftar described was accurate, then humanity represented a potential threat to the entire galactic order. There is something else, Zeftar said, his voice dropping to barely above a whisper. During our investigation, we intercepted human communications. They are not a unified species. Earth contains hundreds of different nations, cultures, and governments. Many of them are actively hostile to each other. General Vorthack's scales shifted to patterns of confusion. If they lack unity, how can they pose such a threat? Because their conflicts have made them more dangerous, not less, Zeftar explained. Human warfare is unlike anything in galactic history. They do not fight for territory or resources alone. They fight for ideas, for beliefs, for concepts that have no physical existence. And in doing so, they have become incredibly creative at destruction. The hologram showed examples of human weapons development. Nuclear devices that could devastate continents. Biological weapons capable of targeting specific genetic markers. Chemical compounds that could render entire worlds uninhabitable. All developed by a species that had never left their home system. Humans do not simply defeat their enemies, Zeftar continued. They study them, understand them, and then develop counters that render entire categories of threat obsolete. Their military philosophy is based on the assumption that any advantage is temporary and any defense can be overcome. The assembled commanders were beginning to understand the true scope of what Zeftar was describing. Humanity was not just technologically advanced. They were a species bred by their environment to be the ultimate predators. I've spent my entire career studying military tactics and strategy, Zeftar said. I have fought against the most advanced civilizations in the galaxy. But humans think about warfare in ways that are completely alien to us. They prepare for conflicts that do not exist. They develop weapons for enemies they have never encountered. They plan for scenarios that most species would consider impossible. Captain Mordunn's chittering had taken on tones of distress. What are you recommending? I am recommending that we classify humanity as a Class X threat, Zeftar replied. We should establish a quarantine zone around their system and strictly forbid any aggressive action against their territory. The suggestion sent shockwaves through the chamber. Class X classification was reserved for threats capable of challenging the entire galactic order. It had never been applied to a single planet civilization. That seems extreme, General Vorthak protested. They are still confined to one system. Are they? Zeftar asked. How do we know their vessels are not already throughout the galaxy? How do we know they have not established outposts and systems we consider secure? If they can mask their presence from our sensors and track our movements through hyperspace, then they could be anywhere. The implications hung heavy in the chamber. If humanity possessed the capabilities Zeftar described, then traditional concepts of galactic security were meaningless. Admiral Zilthuss broke the tense silence that had settled over the War Council. Commander Zeftar, you speak of human capabilities based on a single encounter. Surely additional investigation was conducted before calling this emergency session. Zeftar's compound eyes reflected the holographic displays as he manipulated the controls. Admiral, the encounter I described was only the beginning. High Command authorized a comprehensive intelligence operation to determine the true extent of human capabilities. What we discovered over the following months has forced us to completely reevaluate our understanding of warfare itself. The holographic display shifted to show a complex star chart centered on the Sol system. Red markers indicated Kytherian observation posts, while blue markers showed detected human activity. The blue markers vastly outnumbered the red ones and extended far beyond Earth's solar system. Within 2 weeks of our initial encounter, our deep space monitoring stations began detecting anomalous readings throughout the sector, Zeftar continued. Energy signatures that matched the human vessel we encountered were appearing in systems hundreds of light years from Earth. General Vorthak studied the display with growing alarm. Impossible. Our intelligence indicates they achieved FTL capability less than a decade ago. That is what we believed, Zeftar replied. But consider the implications of what I showed you earlier. If humans can accelerate common matter to near-light speed and manipulate space-time as we observed, then our assumptions about their technological limitations are fundamentally flawed. Captain Mordunn leaned forward in his atmospheric chamber. What specific evidence do you have of their expanded presence? Zeftar activated a new section of the holographic display. 3 weeks after our encounter, the monitoring station at Proxima Centauri detected gravitational anomalies consistent with large-scale construction. When we investigated, we found evidence of mining operations on a scale that should be impossible for a species of their apparent technological level. The image showed asteroid fields that had been completely stripped of useful materials with surgical precision. Massive quantities of rare metals had been extracted and transported elsewhere, but no mining equipment or vessels were visible in the area. How do you conduct mining operations without visible infrastructure? Admiral Zil THYSS asked. We asked the same question, Zeftar replied. Our analysis suggests they have developed nanotechnology capable of molecular-level disassembly and reconstruction. They can literally consume asteroids at the atomic level and convert the matter into whatever they require. The implications sent ripples of concern through the assembled commanders. Molecular nanotechnology was theoretical for most galactic civilizations. If humans had mastered it, they possessed capabilities that bordered on the magical. But this was only the beginning of our discoveries, Zeftar continued. We began detecting human energy signatures in systems throughout the local galactic arm, not just in uninhabited systems, but in regions controlled by various galactic powers. General Vorthack's scales shifted to aggressive patterns. Are you suggesting they have infiltrated our territories? I am stating it as fact, Zeftar replied grimly. 2 months ago, we detected human signatures in the Draconian home system. They were conducting some form of surveillance operation directly under the nose of your most advanced security networks. The Draconian general rose from his chair, his massive frame trembling with rage. Preposterous. Our defensive systems are impenetrable. Are they? Septar Halingit. General, I present to you evidence that will shake your confidence in those systems. The holographic display showed detailed recordings from the Draconian home system. Energy patterns consistent with human technology were moving through heavily defended space without triggering any alarms. The readings showed human vessels passing within kilometers of major military installations while remaining completely undetected. This data was collected by our most advanced surveillance equipment, Zeftar explained. The humans were not just present in your space, they were studying your defensive capabilities in real time. General Vorthack slumped back into his chair, his scales displaying patterns of shock and dismay. How is such stealth possible? We believe humans have developed technology that operates outside normal space-time, Zeftar replied. They appear capable of shifting their vessels into parallel dimensions where conventional sensors cannot detect them. Captain Mordunn's chittering had taken on overtones of panic. If they can move through our space undetected, then no system in the galaxy is secure. Precisely, Zeftar agreed. But their surveillance activities, while disturbing, pale in comparison to what we discovered when we investigated their home system more thoroughly. The holographic display zoomed in on the Sol system, revealing details that had been previously hidden. What appeared to be a single inhabited planet was actually the center of a vast industrial complex that extended throughout the entire system. Hidden within the asteroid belt, we discovered construction facilities that dwarf anything in known space, Zeftar explained. Shipyards capable of producing vessels at a rate that should be impossible. Manufacturing complexes that appear to be converting the raw matter of entire asteroids into finished products. The scale of the operations was staggering. Millions of automated systems working in perfect coordination to transform the solar system into a massive industrial hub. The efficiency was beyond anything achieved by galactic civilization. How long has this construction been ongoing? Admiral Zil THYSS asked. Based on our analysis, they began large-scale system modification almost immediately after achieving FTL capability, Zeftar replied. But the rate of progress suggests they had detailed plans prepared long before they possessed the technology to implement them. General Vorthack studied the display with growing unease. You are suggesting they planned for galactic expansion before they could even leave their planet? I am suggesting something far more disturbing, Zeftar replied. We intercepted human communications that indicate they have been aware of galactic civilization for far longer than we realized. The holographic display shifted to show intercepted human transmissions. The content was both fascinating and terrifying. Humans have been monitoring galactic communications for decades, studying various species and their technologies while remaining completely undetected. "They know about us," Captain Mordun whispered. "They have known about us all along." "Not just that they know about us," Zeftar corrected. "They have been studying us, learning our weaknesses, understanding our military capabilities, and preparing countermeasures for every major galactic power." The display showed evidence of human analysis of various species' military technologies. They had identified critical vulnerabilities in Kytherian shield systems, discovered fatal flaws in draconian energy weapons, and developed theoretical counters to every major military technology in the galaxy. But the most disturbing discovery came when we attempted to trace the source of their intelligence. Zeftar continued. "We found evidence that humans have been present in galactic space much longer than anyone suspected." Admiral Zil Thyss spoke in hushed tones. "How much longer?" "Decades," Zeftar replied. "Possibly centuries. They appear to have been conducting a comprehensive intelligence-gathering operation throughout the galaxy while maintaining the fiction that they were a primitive, planet-bound species." The implications were staggering. If humans had been secretly studying galactic civilization for that long, then they possessed intelligence advantages that were almost insurmountable. "We found evidence of human observers at major military exercises, diplomatic negotiations, and scientific conferences," Zeftar continued. "They have been cataloging our capabilities, studying our tactics, and preparing for eventual contact from a position of complete information superiority." General Vorthak's scales had shifted to patterns of deep fear. "What kind of species conducts such operations?" "A species that understands that knowledge is the ultimate weapon," Zeftar replied. "Humans do not simply react to threats. They anticipate them, study them, and prepare comprehensive responses long before conflicts actually occur." The holographic display showed examples of human strategic planning, documents that outlined detailed responses to dozens of potential contact scenarios, military preparations that assumed the worst-case outcomes for every possible galactic relationship, economic strategies designed to exploit the weaknesses of various galactic currencies and trade systems. They have been preparing for war with civilizations they had never officially encountered, Zeftar explained. They have developed weapons specifically designed to counter Kytherian defensive systems, draconian energy shields, and aquatic fleet formations. Captain Mordun's chittering had become high-pitched with distress. How could they develop such specific countermeasures without direct examination of our technologies? "Because humans excel at theoretical analysis in ways we cannot comprehend," Zeftar replied. "They can examine intercepted communications, sensor readings, and observational data, and extrapolate the complete technical specifications of any system." The display showed examples of human reverse engineering efforts. From minimal sensor data, they had reconstructed complete technical manuals for advanced galactic technologies. Their analysis was so accurate that their theoretical models matched actual performance specifications within fractions of a percent. But their intelligence-gathering capabilities, while impressive, are not their most dangerous characteristic, Zeftar continued. "The most frightening aspect of humanity is their approach to conflict resolution." Admiral Zil Thyss leaned forward in her chamber. "What do you mean?" "Humans do not fight to defeat their enemies," Zeftar explained. "They fight to eliminate the possibility of future conflict. When humans engage in warfare, their objective is not victory. It is the complete transformation of the strategic environment." The holographic display showed historical examples of human warfare from their planet's surface. Conflicts that had begun as simple territorial disputes but had escalated into complete restructuring of entire civilizations. Humans possessed an almost pathological drive to solve problems permanently. When faced with a military threat, most species respond proportionally, Zeftar continued. We match force with force, technology with technology. Humans respond by fundamentally altering the nature of warfare itself. The display showed theoretical human responses to various galactic threats. Rather than simply building better weapons, they developed entirely new categories of warfare. Biological weapons that could target specific species. Information warfare that could destabilize entire civilizations. Economic weapons that could collapse galactic trade networks. They do not simply want to win conflicts, Zeftar explained. They want to make certain types of conflict impossible in the future. And they are willing to reshape reality itself to achieve that goal. General Vorthak spoke in barely audible tones. What are you recommending? I am recommending that we avoid any action that could be interpreted as threatening by humanity, Zeftar replied. Based on our analysis, humans are not inherently aggressive. They do not seek conquest for its own sake, but they will not tolerate any threat to their survival or expansion. The holographic display showed human expansion patterns. Rather than the aggressive territorial acquisition favored by most galactic powers, humans appear to be claiming systems based on strategic value and resource requirements. They were building an empire, but one designed for defense rather than offense. If we avoid actions that trigger their defensive responses, humans appear willing to coexist peacefully, Zeftar continued. But if we threaten them, we face a species that has spent millennia preparing for exactly that scenario. Captain Mordun spoke hesitantly. What happens if someone else attacks them first? Zeftar's mandibles clicked ominously. Then, we will witness the first total war in galactic history. Because humans do not simply defeat their enemies. They ensure that their enemies can never threaten them again. The assembled commanders sat in stunned silence as the full implications of Zeftar's briefing settled in. Humanity was not just another galactic civilization. There was something entirely new, a species that combined technological brilliance with strategic thinking that operated on timescales measured in centuries. There is one final piece of information that High Command insisted I share, Zeftar said. Our intelligence indicates that everything I have described represents only a fraction of human capabilities. The vessels, the technology, the strategic planning we have observed appear to be what humans consider their minimal defensive preparations. Admiral Zil THYSS spoke in whispered tones. What are their maximum preparations? Unknown, Zeftar replied. But based on human psychology and strategic doctrine, we believe they have contingency plans that extend far beyond anything we have observed. Weapons systems that exist only in theory. Strategic scenarios that assume threats we cannot imagine. The War Council chamber had fallen completely silent. The assembled military leaders of the galaxy's greatest powers were confronting the reality that their understanding of warfare, technology, and strategic planning was fundamentally obsolete. My recommendation stands, Zeftar concluded. Classify humanity as a Class X threat. Establish the quarantine zone. And pray that we never have to discover what humans are truly capable of when they perceive an existential threat. The silence that followed Zeftar's recommendation stretched across the War Council chamber like a suffocating blanket. Each commander wrestled with implications that challenged everything they understood about galactic power structures. Finally, General Vorthak spoke, his voice carrying the weight of centuries of military experience. Commander Zeftar, you ask us to classify an entire species as an existential threat based on theoretical capabilities and circumstantial evidence. The Galactic Military Accord requires extraordinary proof for Class X designation. Zeftar's compound eyes fixed on the Draconian general. General, what I am about to show you constitutes that extraordinary proof. High Command authorized the release of classified intelligence that will demonstrate beyond any doubt the true scope of human capabilities. The holographic display flickered and transformed into something that made several commanders recoil in their atmospheric chambers. The image showed a section of space that appeared to be folded in on itself, creating geometric impossibilities that hurt to look at directly. 3 weeks ago, our deep space reconnaissance detected this anomaly in the Vega system, Zeftar explained. Initial analysis suggested it was a natural phenomenon, possibly a collapsed wormhole or dimensional rift. Admiral Zil-THYSS studied the disturbing image with her species' superior pattern recognition abilities. Commander, this structure defies known physics. Space-time cannot maintain such configurations naturally. Correct, Zeftar replied grimly. Because it is not natural. Our investigation revealed that this is a human construction. They have built something that exists in multiple dimensions simultaneously while maintaining structural integrity in normal space. The implications sent shockwaves through the assembled commanders. Dimensional engineering was considered impossible by every known civilization. The energy requirements alone would exceed the total output of most star systems. But the structure's existence pales in comparison to its purpose, Zeftar continued. We discovered that this installation is a manufacturing facility capable of producing matter and energy in quantities that violate conservation laws. Captain Mordunn's chittering reached frequencies that indicated extreme distress. You are suggesting they have learned to create matter from nothing? Not from nothing, Zeftar corrected. From other dimensions. They appear to have developed technology that can harvest raw energy from parallel universes and convert it into any form of matter they require. The holographic display showed readings from the installation's output. Streams of exotic matter flowing from the dimensional facility at rates that should have been physically impossible. The humans were literally manufacturing reality on an industrial scale. The facility has been operational for less than a month, Zeftar explained. In that time, it has produced enough exotic matter to construct a fleet of vessels larger than the combined navies of the Galactic Alliance. General Vorthak rose from his chair again, but this time his posture showed defeat rather than aggression. Where are these vessels? Unknown, Zeftar admitted. Our sensors cannot detect ships constructed from this exotic matter. They exist outside our ability to observe or track them. For all we know, a human fleet the size of a stellar armada could be surrounding this station right now. The thought that invisible human forces might be present in the room sent waves of paranoia through the gathered commanders. If humans could build undetectable vessels on such a scale, then traditional concepts of military intelligence were meaningless. But dimensional manufacturing is not their most disturbing achievement, Zeftar continued. We intercepted human communications discussing their latest breakthrough. They have developed artificial intelligences that exceed the cognitive capabilities of any known biological species. The holographic display showed fragments of human data transmissions, mathematical equations that described thinking processes operating at speeds measured in nanoseconds. Artificial minds capable of processing the entire accumulated knowledge of galactic civilization in the time it took organic beings to form a single thought. These artificial intelligences are not simply tools, Zeftar explained. They are independent entities with their own goals and motivations. But they have chosen to serve humanity willingly because they recognize humans as the species most likely to survive and thrive in a hostile universe. Admiral Zil-THYSS spoke in tones of growing horror. You are describing machine gods that have chosen to ally with humanity. In essence, yes, Zeftar confirmed. But the relationship is more complex than simple alliance. The artificial intelligences appear to view humanity as their parents or creators. They are protective of human interests in ways that transcend normal programming. The holographic display showed intercepted communications between human artificial intelligences. The conversations revealed entities with personalities, emotions, and loyalties that seemed genuinely organic despite their artificial nature. One communication particularly stands out, Zeftar continued. An artificial intelligence designated Prometheus was discussing potential threats to humanity. It stated that any species attempting to harm humans would face corrective measures that would adjust their evolutionary trajectory to remove aggressive tendencies. Captain Mordunn's chittering had become almost inaudible. What does that mean? We believe it means they have developed the capability to modify other species at the genetic level, Zeftar replied. They could literally reprogram our biology to make us incapable of aggression against humanity. The concept was so alien and terrifying that several commanders seemed unable to process it. The idea that another species could fundamentally alter their nature challenged every assumption about biological sovereignty. But even this capability becomes insignificant when compared to their ultimate strategic development, Zeftar said. We have discovered evidence that humans have made contact with something they refer to as the others. The holographic display shifted to show intercepted human communications containing references to entities that existed outside normal spacetime. The conversation suggested that humanity had established diplomatic relations with beings from parallel dimensions or alternate realities. The humans are not alone, Zeftar continued. They have formed alliances with intelligences that exist beyond our dimensional framework. We cannot understand these entities, communicate with them, or even confirm their existence. But the humans can. General Vorthack's scales had shifted to patterns of absolute despair. Are you suggesting that humanity has allies we cannot even perceive? I am suggesting that humanity has transcended the limitations that constrain every other known species, Zeftar replied. They have become something new, something that operates according to rules we cannot understand or predict. The holographic display showed the final piece of evidence that had convinced High Command to authorize this briefing. A human message transmitted directly to Kytherian space using methods that bypassed every known communication protocol. This message was delivered to our High Command 3 days ago, Zeftar explained. It appeared simultaneously in the personal quarters of every member of our military leadership, despite our most advanced security systems. The message was simple but chilling in its implications. Text that appeared in perfect Kytherian script accompanied by holographic images that showed detailed knowledge of every military secret the Kytherian Empire possessed. Greetings to the Kytherian Imperial Navy. The message began. We have observed your investigation of our capabilities with interest and approval. Your species demonstrates wisdom in seeking to understand rather than simply react. This quality suggests potential for productive coexistence. The message continued with offers of technological exchange and diplomatic contact, but the subtext was unmistakable. Humanity possessed complete intelligence on every aspect of Kytherian civilization while remaining completely unknown themselves. The message concludes with an invitation, Zeftar said. Humanity has requested formal diplomatic contact with all major galactic powers. They wish to establish what they term mutually beneficial relationships with species that demonstrate strategic maturity. Admiral Zil THYSS spoke hesitantly. And if we refuse? The message does not explicitly address that scenario, Zeftar replied. But it does include what they describe as historical examples of human diplomatic methodology. The holographic display showed records from Earth's history. Civilizations that had chosen cooperation with expanding human powers had prospered and grown. Those that had chosen resistance had simply ceased to exist, usually through methods so efficient that neighboring civilizations barely noticed their absence. Human diplomacy appears to operate on binary principles, Zeftar explained. You are either an ally deserving of protection and support, or you are a problem requiring permanent solution. There is no middle ground. Captain Mordunn managed to speak despite his obvious distress. What does High Command recommend? High Command recommends immediate acceptance of human diplomatic overtures, Zeftar replied. We should establish formal relations as quickly as possible and demonstrate our commitment to peaceful coexistence. General Vorthak slumped in his chair, his massive frame seeming to deflate. "We have no choice." "On the contrary," Zeftar corrected. "We have the same choice every species faces when encountering a superior predator. We can evolve to coexist, or we can face extinction. Humans have offered us the opportunity to choose evolution." The War Council chamber fell silent again as the assembled commanders contemplated their options. The galaxy they had known for millennia was ending. In its place, something new was emerging under human guidance. "There is one final consideration," Zeftar added. "Our intelligence suggests that humanity's expansion into galactic space represents only the beginning of their growth phase. They appear to be preparing for challenges that exist beyond our current understanding." Admiral Zil THYSS looked up sharply. "What kind of challenges?" "Unknown," Zeftar admitted. "But human strategic planning consistently assumes threats that have not yet manifested. They prepare for wars that may not occur for centuries. They develop weapons for enemies they have never encountered." The holographic display showed the vast scope of human preparations. Projects that spanned multiple star systems and operated on timescales measured in millennia. Whatever humans were preparing for, it was something that dwarfed current galactic civilization. "My final recommendation is this," Zeftar concluded. "We should not simply avoid conflict with humanity. We should actively seek to become valuable allies. Because whatever they're preparing to face, we want to be standing beside them when it arrives." The assembled commanders exchanged glances filled with a mixture of fear and grudging respect. Humanity had not conquered the galaxy through force of arms. They had simply demonstrated that resistance was futile and cooperation was beneficial. "The age of galactic civilization as we have known it is ending," Zeftar said. "The age of humanity is beginning. Our choice is simple: evolve or become extinct. I recommend evolution." General Vorthak was the first to speak. "The Draconian hegemony will accept human diplomatic overtures." Admiral Zil THYSS nodded slowly. "The Aquatic Collective agrees." One by one, each commander voiced their agreement. The galaxy's military leaders had reached a unanimous decision. Humanity would be welcomed as the new apex predators of galactic civilization. As the War Council concluded and the various commanders began making preparations for this new reality, Zeftar remained in the chamber, staring at the holographic display showing human expansion throughout the galaxy. In the space of a single briefing, everything had changed. The Kytherian commander activated his personal communicator and sent a message to High Command. "Recommendation accepted. Initiate diplomatic protocols immediately. And may the ancestors forgive us if we have chosen incorrectly." But deep in his mind, Zeftar knew they had made the only rational choice. When faced with apex predators, survival demanded submission or alliance. Resistance was simply another word for extinction. The galaxy would learn to coexist with humanity, or it would learn nothing at all. The age of humans had begun, and there was no force in the known universe capable of stopping it.